Okay. Wow, we got quite a crew here, and I think we have more to come, but I'd love for us to go ahead and get started. We've got an incredible group of folks here today. My name is Lillian Myers. I'm with StarterStudio, and we are so delighted and grateful to EY to be sponsoring a series this summer on women's and business. And for the many of us, it's all about getting started, starting new businesses, but for others, it's about growing their existing business. And even later this summer, we'll be talking about being a woman in leadership in even corporate environments. So today's session is going to be all about finding your footing. Once you started a company, now what happens? And we've got a great group of entrepreneurs who have done just that and are really thrilled to be here to share their adventures with you. Again, my name is Lillian Myers, and your host for today will be Jennifer Williams from EY, and she'll be talking about EY's commitment to entrepreneurship. And another of the EY colleagues, Chevy Arnold. I'm sorry, Chevy, I'm going to go right to the short version. Thanks very much for making that possible. Joe Newell from the Orlando Economic Partnership and Orlando Chamber will be here talking about the regional focus on women through a program called All Women Empowered. And Alexandria, I'll call her Alex, but Alexandria Agresta, the founder of Purpose Pioneers, a StarterStudio company, a company that came through StarterStudio's Accelerator program some time ago, and will also be on the panel. We'll share some really, really exciting work that she does every day around finding purpose in your business. I'll talk a bit about our Build Accelerator, and then our panel, Kristen Wiley, Katie Homan, and Alexandria will all be here to share their individual journeys with you, with Jennifer presiding over that panel. So our team, again, I've spoken about each of these, so you're aware of who they are and where they come from, but this will be a fun journey for us all today. And why don't I just kick it off and hand it right over to Jennifer.
Excellent. Thanks, Lillian. Welcome, everybody. Very excited to be running our second session. For those of you that did not join the first session, just a little bit of background. I think, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this session is because basically what we're seeing in the data is that women are rethinking their career, their path. What should they do? Should they go back to, a traditional job? Or should they really try to maybe embrace their passion, find new purpose? And so one of those ways is, focusing on entrepreneurship. And so for those of you that are familiar with EY is very committed to entrepreneurship. We have 3 different programs, actually. And the first being our Entrepreneur of the Year, which very proud of that. We've just run our program for Florida this summer. And we do have a local Florida winner in Stack Studios. So that program's been around since 1986. Our second program, which Chevy will speak a little bit more about in depth, is Entrepreneurial Winning Women. So we started that in 2008. And we also have some local ladies part of that program as well. That is a global program. And then last year, we started the Entrepreneurs Access Network, which is really teaming with Black and Latinx founders. And so I think the applications for that program have just kicked off. And so we'll share all of this with you guys when we're done, so you have all this information. But I think that's just a reflection of how committed we are to entrepreneurship as a firm. The other area where we bring in entrepreneurs is through our Ripples program. And so that is our umbrella community engagement program. But I think what is interesting about that, if you go to the next slide, Nicole, is that within our 3 areas of focus, we actually have working with impact entrepreneurs. So I think with those 4 pillars, we covered every type of potential entrepreneur, which again, I think it just speaks volumes as to how EY is committed. So I'm going to turn over to Chevy and let her talk a little bit more in depth about Entrepreneurial Winning Women and give a flavor of what that program looks like.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate your kind introduction. And just to give you all a little background, I serve as the Entrepreneurial Winning Women Central Region Leader for EY. And I also have the privilege of serving as the Program Director for our Southeast Entrepreneur of the Year program. So honored to be here with all of you today. And big thank you to StarterStudio for all you do to expand and support the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Florida. At EY, all of our entrepreneurial programs offer the opportunity for founders and CEOs to really broaden their network, access resources to scale, and become a part of a global entrepreneurial community. Our 3 programs really span across all stages of a company's growth, from startup to exit. And what sets these entrepreneurs apart is really their passion, their grit, their perseverance, their innovative thinking, and transformative leadership. And so our Entrepreneur of the Year program was founded 35 years ago in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and has grown to a global program spanning over 60 countries. In the US, we have 20 regional programs, and applicants are judged by an independent panel of judges, primarily consisting of CEOs and former Entrepreneur of the Year winners. And the winners of the regional programs go on to compete at the national level at our Strategic Growth Forum in Palm Springs in November. And then there is one overall national winner chosen to represent the US at the World Entrepreneur of the Year Awards in Monaco in June. So it continues to escalate from the regional level. So Entrepreneur of the Year honorees are unstoppable leaders who are truly disrupting their industries. And although it is a true honor to win this prestigious award, I will say the value is not only in the trophy, but it really comes from the network you build among the CEOs and founders that are amongst your peers. We've seen successful mergers, acquisitions, alliances, partnerships, capital investments, customer and supplier relationships really develop among our Entrepreneur of the Year alumni. So it's truly a great opportunity to network with your peers and really build really successful business relationships. So I'm going to skip over the Winning Women data right here because I'm going to go into it in more detail in just a few minutes. But I'm going to cover the Entrepreneurs Access Network, which is a cohort, and it's a business accelerator program, an evergreen community to help Black and Latino-owned companies really bridge the disparity gap and grow their businesses. So minority-owned companies contribute greatly to the US economy, about 4.7 million jobs and about $7 billion in annual revenue. And over the past decade, Black and Latinx-led companies have started more than 1 million new businesses across the US, but it's really been only with about 1% of the venture capital dollars. And while recent reports show that this has potentially increased to about 2.4%, there's still so much room to grow. And EY launched the Entrepreneurs Access Network to help bridge this gap. And so we launched it in 2020 with 2 parallel programs, the Curated and On-Demand program, which are both supported by EY resources and alliances. And in our inaugural Curated EAN cohort, it consisted of approximately 120 diverse entrepreneurs across 12 geographic areas. And so, as Jennifer mentioned, applications for our next Entrepreneurs Access Network cohort are open now and are due by September 17th. So we will, as she said, share all this information with you. So next slide, please. So I know this is a busy slide, so I'll go over it in kind of pieces, but our Entrepreneurial Winning Women program was created in 2008 to help bridge really the gender gap for women founders. The program has grown across the globe and operates in 48 countries with over 700 members. Our North American program includes approximately 140 women founders from the US and Canada. And EY provides a platform for women entrepreneurs to elevate their brand, really broaden their exposure to potential capital providers, gain confidence and access to resources to scale their companies. Some of the companies that have come through our Winning Women program are ones you may recognize, Hint Water, It Cosmetics, and Stella & Dot. Now, they weren't nearly the size that they are today when they were selected to join Winning Women, but with the access to resources, mentorship, and valuable connections, they've continued to scale. And I would say, on average, our Winning Women see approximately a 35% compound annual growth rate and an average of about 166% headcount growth after becoming part of our Winning Women program. So that's pretty impressive growth. 14 of our US winning women have gone on to win the Entrepreneur of the Year award, which includes your Orlando superstar, Sunera Medhani. She just won recently as the CEO of Stack. So very excited and proud of her for that accomplishment. And then we've also had 2 national finalists and a regional winner, a national winner, Phyllis Newhouse, who's the founder and CEO of Extreme Solutions, which is a cybersecurity company in Atlanta. So Winning Women, though, is not an awards program, but it's an evergreen program that provides women founders the opportunity to really connect and learn from each other year after year. One thing I hear from women entrepreneurs is it's pretty lonely at the top. And I really wish I had a peer network to bounce ideas off of and share experiences. So our Entrepreneurial Winning Women program offers this network, and the members really fondly refer to it as a sisterhood. We connect on various topics of interest in we call them huddles, where we have typically a guest speaker who's one of our winning women who may specialize in a specific field or area. So recent examples of our huddles include improving wellness, expanding your digital footprint. We've done different sessions on capital raising as well. We also have open forum discussions and get together in person annually so that women can, these winning women can connect together, both socially and from a professional standpoint. And many of our winning women, just connect regularly within the cohort to share and celebrate success stories or ask advice on how to address, challenging situations. I actually just had an email come in my inbox this morning from one of our winning women in South Africa who had a very successful exit. And she has since started a venture fund supporting South African women founders. And 2 of her, I think, portfolio companies are now launching some of their products in the US. So she's asking for us to help elevate and amplify the launch of those products. So super exciting for them. Our Winning Women application period typically runs March to May, and eligibility criteria includes company has to have at least 2 million in revenue for the last 2 consecutive years. The company must be less than 10 years old, and the female founder is the majority owner of the business. Now, if you've had outside capital come in, that's completely fine, but we still need to have you be the majority owner, even though it may not be over 50%. An independent panel of judges reviews all the applications across the US and Canada and selects a current year cohort, which is announced and celebrated at our EY Strategic Growth Forum in November. And we typically have about 12 companies in our new Winning Women class, but this year we've almost doubled that number since we didn't announce a class in 2020 and instead focused helping our current cohort manage through the challenges of COVID. So in closing, if you're just beginning your entrepreneurial journey, or if you're a few years in, I highly recommend joining an accelerator like StarterStudio or an entrepreneurial program that offers the opportunity to really expand your network with other leaders, provides resources to scale and mentorship from entrepreneurs who have successfully built their businesses. And no matter how far along you are in your growth journey, don't be afraid to ask for guidance and find support programs to open doors that will really propel your company to that next level. So with that, I know I just covered a lot of information, and I'm happy to open it up to questions if you want to put any in the chat, or if you're happy to do that, or happy to connect offline as well.
Thank you, Chevy. Yeah, anybody, if you have questions, throw it in the chat, or I think you can raise your hand and we'll try to facilitate that. We will have, as Lillian said, we'll have our panel discussion in a little bit. And so you'll have the opportunity also to ask questions. But thanks, Chevy. Appreciate that little bit deeper dive. And these are, this is not fee paying programs. I mean, this is you apply, right? And it is not what you would think typically maybe of coming from a public accounting firm. So just don't be shy if you think you have, something to contribute. I mean, I encourage you to look at the program and the application process. So our next speaker, I am happy to introduce Joe Newell, Vice President of the Orlando Regional Chamber, and a friend of mine, and I'm sure of many of you on the panel. She is going to talk today about the All Women Empowered initiative that she spearheaded, frankly, I guess, going back to 2019, right, Joe, before we got into the pandemic.
I know. Who can even remember what those days look like? So
you can remember it.
Yes. Who can remember?
Nope, can't. But so Joe, over to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And just wanted to say thank you to Lillian and to you for hosting this series. I joined the first one. I believe it is so important for women and entrepreneurs. As Jennifer said, I'm the vice president at the Orlando Regional Chamber, which is a core component of the Orlando Economic Partnership. And supporting and empowering women is very near and dear to my heart. And pre-COVID, we launched this program and really spearheaded called All Women Empowered, or AW for short. And I learned a lot through this process. And one thing that I can tell you is this community wants to see women advance. And it is so inspiring that we're doing programs like this and that all of you showed up for yourself today. So on the next slide, just going to go over a quick roadmap, because before we jump into All Women Empowered, just kind of painting a picture for you of what's going on. What happened, how COVID-19 has impacted women, some trends that we've seen through our scorecard, key takeaways, and then I'll briefly touch a little bit on All Women Empowered. So on the next slide here, I don't know if many of you have seen this, but I think it really is important to really highlight our jobs are just not returning equally. So from February 2020 to June 2021, more than half the jobs still missing in the US belong to women. One of the things that are really holding back our country, and not just Orlando, from economic recovery is the disparity that we're seeing between jobs held by men versus women. So 56% of the jobs still missing were previously held by women in the US, while 44% of the 6.8 jobs still missing were held by men. And this does vary from industry to industry, but it is still very telling and sobering. So next slide talks about the job gains and how they differ from men to women. So here we see that percent of jobs lost from men to women compared to before the pandemic. So you're going from left to right, you see the industries where women's jobs have outperformed men, with the recovery decreasing as you're going to the right. Most importantly, most of the jobs that are still missing that we're seeing are in the leisure and hospitality area. Here is where women's jobs are slightly more impacted, missing 13.5% of the jobs that were held before the pandemic compared to the 12.2% for men. But what I really want everybody to take away from this is overall, women are not finding or afforded the same opportunities to return to work. So Lillian touched on it, Jennifer touched on it. Women are really rethinking what next, what for me, because the pandemic impacted women. We saw it a lot in terms of the jobs they held, whether it be in food service or housekeeping, which that was the one that most impacted. And then simultaneously, we either experienced it or saw that the woman had to perform childcare duties, tutor, teacher, caretaker for the elderly, for their parents, while their spouse went to work because of the salary and the spouse made more. So on the next slide, I really want to dive into some Orlando Prosperity Scorecard trends that we've seen that really touch on women and minority-owned business owners. So the past year, the partnership, the Orlando Economic Partnership, released a new report called Beyond the Baseline. And this report really touched on some of the key areas like women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses, and took some of those things into account. And I will drop the link for the scorecard here, because in the time I would not be able to go over everything. But on the next slide, what I really wanted to show and discuss is scaling companies versus those that are startups. So what was brought to our attention is that scaling companies here in our region, which is 10 to 99 employees, is shrinking, while the number of jobs for startup companies, that's 2 to 9, is rising. There's some positive stuff that comes of that, because the growing number of startups we're starting to see increase here in our region, which would indicate to us that starting a business here in Florida is a fairly easy thing to do. But one thing I encourage and empower everybody to do, it's one thing to start, it's another thing to scale. And there are so many programs and people committed and dedicated to making this happen. And I just encourage you to make sure that you're scaling your business. And like I said, even if you're just in the startup phase, to always be thinking, what is next? On the next slide, just going to jump quickly here into talking about minority-owned business and women-owned business. And this is where, it is really telling. So the scorecard revealed there is a large gap in women and minority-owned businesses here in our region. So if we were to assume that Black, Hispanic, or women residents should own business at equal rates of their presence here in our region, we would find that that's not the case. There is a large gap. For example, and I know some of you might have heard this before, but I just think it, once again, is so telling. Women, we represent 51% of the population here in Orlando, but we only own 20% of the businesses. This number allowed for us to calculate, like if we wanted to get to the baseline of 0 and there to be no gap, there would need to be an additional 7,700 more Black owners, 12,000 more Hispanic, and roughly 32,000 women-owned businesses here in our region, in addition to what's already here. And you think, wow, but you take those numbers into consideration, and Orlando actually ranks relatively high compared to other metros for Hispanic, Black, and women-owned businesses. So I say this to you, if you're a woman-owned business, if you're thinking about it, take a minute to stop and feel proud of what you have accomplished. You are the small percent, but don't just stop there. Reach back and help someone else. If you're thinking about it, now is the time, and let's continue to close that gap. And this is where I'm going to start talking a little bit about All Women Empowered, because our tagline is we rise by lifting others. And I believe in that tagline. But before I jump into that, I did jump a little ahead, sorry. Some key takeaways from what we discussed, and then next slide. Okay, next one, and the key takeaways. And then I'll jump into All Women Empowered. Is Orlando is gaining more jobs. We're seeing that every month. But there is going to be some time before we get to pre-pandemic levels. Women were not recovering at the same rate because of a lot of barriers and things that have impacted our work. But we're seeing people be more interested in being entrepreneurs and business owners. And that's why programs like this are so important. And the last one really speaks to programs like this as well, is equitable economic recovery includes helping existing businesses scale and encouraging women to advance in ownership. So on the next slide here, the last thing I'm going to wrap up talking about is All Women Empowered. And I cannot say enough about a community that wants to see women propel forward. Jennifer, as she mentioned, has been a part of this since it was just an idea. But here I'm going to go over quickly what the purpose of this group is. This group consists of men and women from different sectors, from every different walk you can think of, have come together and said, listen, it is important that women in our region feel supported. There are so many groups and programs and initiatives and women on the move, and we have to know, and they have to know, that we're here to support them. So a couple ways that we're doing this is we're amplifying stories of women in the region. So we have our awesome Women in Orlando blog series, and I'll drop the link to all of this when I'm done. So we have that, and then we are strengthening and providing resources to women and business owners. So it's partnering with organizations like StarterStudio, like EY, to make sure that women know about the opportunities that are available for them, because sometimes it's just not knowing about that resource, and really making sure that we're focusing on, there's so many good things here. How do we just put all our energy behind supporting what's here and making sure that the people are getting connected to the resource? And lastly, it's providing programming that equip women with the tools they need to build their future. So last week we had our Awe Impact Forum, and the forum brought together a lot of the resources in the region that are available to women all in one place where you could learn, whether you're a woman in business, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're going back into the workforce. We brought everything together so people could really learn about the resources that are available for them. So in closing, I want to leave you with this, and I'll put the scorecard and the link to the Awe page in the chat. Now is the time. You have the support of the community, the resources are available. I'll put the link to the Awe webpage. If you're a women business owner, please fill out a quick form. You'll be added to the webpage. And it also has other resources for women here in our region. That's it. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here with you. I look forward to meeting everybody and seeing them in person. Thank you for showing up for yourselves, and thank you for putting in the work.
Thank you, Joe. You know how I feel. I think those stats are so important. And especially, and this is why we're here today for the second, series around scaling, the fact that we're not scaling. So you have the opportunity, if you've taken the leap to start a business, which is a huge leap, especially if you're coming from a traditional, more of a job or career path. That is huge. And then to not be able to scale, that is just, it's so frustrating. So seeing that in the numbers makes it so important that I think people do reach out. And I love the All Women Empowered, We Rise by Lifting Others. That is exactly it. And that's why we're here. And before we even get to Lillian to talk about how to build, and scale, we have a special guest speaker with Alexandra Agresta, who's going to talk about exactly that. How do you find your footing, but with purpose? Because I frankly think as a woman that there are some things that we still do collectively as women, which is we want purpose, we want passion. So how do we combine that and then really accelerate, right, our ability to scale? So with that, turn it over to Alex.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Well, first and foremost, I am a StarterStudio alumni, class 7. It feels like forever ago. So I already see we have some StarterStudio fam in our Zoom today. So just want to give a shout out to that. It was such an honor to be asked to come speak, share my story. So before we do any of that, all my team, my EY and my StarterStudio team know that I bring the energy. I'm really big on energy, especially we're in this virtual world still, like our butts are glued to the seat, we're behind the screen. So let's for a moment feel like we're in person together. We're like in that StarterStudio boardroom with all the whiteboards. So let's get some feeling words in the chat. How you feeling? One feeling word in the chat. Let's get that energy flowing through the Zoom room. Great, motivated, inspired. Yes, I love that. Excited. Let's get some feeling words from all of our beautiful humans that chose to come hang out with us today. Happy, stoked, love that word, excited, pumped. Oh my, you see what energy does? It's amazing. It's incredible. All right, one more thing I want to get in the chat, and this will come full circle with some things I'm going to share today. I would love for you to write out in the chat, what is one thing you want support in your career or business right now? What's one thing that feels like a challenge, but you're seeing it as your greatest opportunity? What's that thing, right? What's next on the horizon for you that you're really focusing on? Let's get that in the chat. It's so important to get this out of our heart, out of our head, out into the world so we can really move forward. So I'd love to hear that in the chat. As we're getting that in the chat, as Jennifer shared, my name is Alexandria Agresta. I am the co-founder at Purpose Pioneers, where we believe in a world where people fully align what they do to make money with what they do to experience meaning and fulfillment in their lives. And we call that the sweet spot between purpose and profit. And when you start a business, grow a business, and most importantly, scale a business from that sweet spot, you are unstoppable, especially during times of chaos, turbulence, and uncertainty. So how we bring that belief to life is we turn entrepreneurs into thought leaders and businesses into movements. And we teach our purpose-driven philosophies through coaching, consulting, and we also host live experiences. So today we are talking all about finding our footing with purpose, not only starting and growing the business around purpose, but I've been hearing this word scale, right? How do we get to that point of we have recurring revenue coming in, which helps us have the financial sustainability to keep going, grow our team, put new products and services into the marketplace. So you're going to hear me speak on the panel in just a little bit. And I know Jennifer has prepared some rockin' questions to really hit home with this topic around purpose-driven growing and scaling. So what I thought was the best for my session here, I'm going to share with you 3 simple and practical pieces of wisdom that have helped me scale my business. And what's really cool is these are really all centered around purpose. They come from that heart space. It's really easy to get caught in our mind, our monkey mind. And really what's empowered me to grow and scale is dropping more into my heart space, getting in tune with what my heart wants, what my soul wants, and bringing that purpose out. And then this is where we do the fun business stuff, putting it into practice, putting it into products and services, putting it into our operations. Beautiful industry mentorship, being vulnerable about where I am in this stage of building. You're going to like all the things I'm sharing. Love that word, vulnerability, financial support, and education. Beautiful. So for everyone, just make sure you jot that out either in the chat or your notebook of what's your greatest challenge that you see as your greatest opportunity. So 3 pieces of wisdom. Number 1, and make sure to write these nuggets down. These are things that you can noodle on, that you can go back to. Empathy. Empathy breeds confidence, especially during times of uncertainty. It is so important whether you are just starting your business, whether you're in that scale mode where you're like, oh my God, we have the runway, we have the capital, we can actually grow this baby. Whether you are like Chevy was saying, in that I don't know if I want to go back to the workforce. What does my next phase look like? Wherever you're at, it is critical that you obsess over serving real human beings. Real human beings. This was the foundation of what we learned in StarterStudio, with that business model canvas. I remember it was like the size of the wall, and I was writing it all out. It is so important, especially when the world changes like that we put our little empathy cap on and we go out there and we ask real questions to real people. Where are people hurting? What has changed? Where do these people want to go? I really believe everyone has a need that they are willing to invest in. Everyone. Even during economic downturns, even during political turmoil. Every single human has a pain, a challenge, a problem that they are willing to invest in. And what has made us incredibly successful, especially during the pandemic, we are obsessed at Purpose Pioneers with understanding our people, and not just that first level of understanding. When the world changes literally overnight, everything about us changes. Our priorities change, our challenges change, our opportunities change. So wherever you're at in your business, I call it the empathy engine. You want to be growing alongside of your market. Now that this next thing happened, where do your people now want to go? Now that the world is upside down, what pains are they now experiencing? And you can craft powerful products, powerful services. If you're going to go back to the job market, you can position yourself as wildly valuable because you know exactly what they need. Go to the people and let them tell you what they need. Don't guess. Don't lock yourself in your office and try and figure it out. Go out there and have real conversations with real humans. All right, I also want you to jot this down. Inspired action. So if you're feeling inspired by like, oh my God, I want to put my little empathy cap on. I want to go out there. I want to understand real people. You're going to love this little inspired action nugget. Write down one person that you can think of that you want to serve. Write them down. A real human's name. Don't put like women in financing, I want a real human being's name. We got to humanize business. And then we're going to supercharge it. I won't know if you do this, but I'm going to supercharge it for you. Reach out to them and set up what I call an empathy call. On this call, you have no agenda. You're just there to ask questions and find out their needs and listen to them. We are in a time where no one is listening to each other. If you can be this little light that wants to go listen to people, whoo, talk about scaling. This is literally the thing that helped us scale. We are obsessed with understanding our market, and we just come out with products and services that our people are like, are you reading our mind? They're like throwing their money at us because we're going out there and we know exactly what they need. Number 2, we don't run businesses, we further movements. I think Chevy was also saying this. Everyone who went before me, I was like, oh my God, this information is so incredible. So I think it was Chevy, maybe the person before or after.
It tells you we are so on track.
Oh
right?
my God.
I mean, that to me is like amazing. Further movements. I love it.
Yes, we don't run businesses, we further movements. We are in a time, like luckily, and we're making so much progress. We are in a time where a majority of people, anyone can start a business. You can start a blog, you can start a Shopify account, you can anything. I mean, the possibilities, I've never seen so many possibilities at once. Now that poses a little bit of a challenge in the economic and capitalistic market. Is there's competition, there's saturation, there's low trust. So what do we do when there's a lot of people coming into the market? What do we do to get people to trust us right now, not later, not after we build all these things and, 30 years of experience? Hell no, we don't have time for that. How do we get people to trust us and believe in us now? We further a movement. You're not an entrepreneur running a business. I don't believe that. You're all thought leaders furthering a movement. A movement is this unstoppable force that has this magnetism about it. You know why? Someone said vulnerability. Because you're honest, you're real, you're vulnerable. You stand up and you say the thing that your people want to hear during a time where we need it most. A movement has this magnetism where people that work for the movement can't believe they get to work there. Customers that buy from there can't believe they get to buy from this movement. And what this does is it forms this community, this tribe. And what this movement does is it helps your people keep being who they want to be, doing what they want to do, and be around others just like them. This is important here where we all start to shift our language. I want you to all start saying, I'm furthering a movement. Just see what that does to your people. That word has energetic weight to it. It does something. It moves people. We can be putting out products and services, and I have the best thing here, and these are all my offerings and my benefits and features. Honestly, there's so much of that crap. We don't care. We don't care. But you know what we do care about as the marketplace? We care about how you make us feel, what you make us think about ourselves, what you allow us to believe about ourselves. Talk about these things. Inspired action step. Name your movement. Like, I want all of you to do this today because it's going to be a lot of fun. 3 words or less. For us at Purpose Pioneers, we are furthering the purpose first movement. I'm telling you, when you make this energetic shift in your business and your career, everything changes. This helped us scale. You know why? Because with the movement comes insane magnetism. We became so magnetic, we didn't know what to do. Like we actually hit a wall or a glass ceiling that we had to break through real quick. We're like, oh my God, this is going beyond us. We got to hire a team. We got to do this. We got to do that. This will help you scale without a doubt. Last, wrapping up here. I think a lot of you peeps are going to like this. I know we got some speakers. We got 25 people in here. We're guaranteed to have at least 5 speakers in this group. Speaking on stage invites you into what I call the field of possibility. I know Kristen Wiley, we were right around StarterStudio together. She rocked this too. Get on stage. I don't care if you don't have it all figured out. You don't have to. That stage will build instant trust, credibility, and authority for your business. These are key ingredients that you need to scale. If you are scaling, what do you need as the soil to scaling? Trust. Trust is the foundation of transactions. So I want you thinking, where can you go speak? Maybe it's the chamber. I don't know. Maybe it's EY. Maybe it's StarterStudio. You might have some opportunities right here. Where can you go speak about your beliefs? Speak about the empathy that you are seeing in the marketplace. Speak about your movement and speak about the thing that is going to light your people on fire. You know how I built my business? I got my booty on stage. Like, wow. Again, Kristen and I remember she was pitching everywhere and so was I. It was nuts. Like we maybe were a little crazy with how many times we pitched, but I'm telling you that stage, instant trust, credibility, authority. So last nugget here, inspired action. What is one local stage that you can speak on or pitch? There's 1 million cups. There's chambers of commerce. There are co-working spaces. There are things like StarterStudio. Reach out, talk to real humans. They might be looking for someone like you. You never know. That stage has changed my life. So I will leave you with this. This is a piece of wisdom that is so near and dear to my heart. If anything inspired you, anything that you heard just like rocked your world, I want you to know that things don't take time, they take courage. It doesn't take time to do this. It really doesn't take time to scale. It doesn't take time to do the damn thing. It takes present moment courage. So like all these incredible, beautiful women that are hosting this today, I keep hearing the same thing. It's time. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen next week. Step into the flow of courage and just take that next step to get you closer to where you want to be. Thank you so much. Oh, I was right on the 15 mark.
Oh my God, that is so incredible. Thank you so much for inspiring us. That is one of the best, one of the best speeches I've heard, honestly, in my entire career. I mean, I think I might have to go out and retire right now so I can go find my purpose and further a movement. So Lillian, I may be applying to your
Accelerator studio candidate. Yeah, come on, Jennifer, let's go.
That was amazing, really. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely get you on the panel. We'll dig a little deeper. So Lillian, I mean, over to you. Tell us how we nuts and bolts get into a build stage.
Thank you so much. Alexandria, thank you. That was just, and such a tough act to follow. I want to say that too. But let me try to inspire some other things for the audience as well. And that is this growth idea. And, you know, I think about being a woman. I know that a couple of us on this call are of a similar generation, and we were in a time when, oh my gosh, just being the only woman around a table was a really hard thing. Today, we've got so many opportunities. And if we get to the next slide, I'm going to hit on a couple of things that are super important. And I'm going to set my timer because otherwise Nicole will be after me pretty quick to stop running my mouth and not not try to be over inspiring. So just quickly, what you should all be thinking about right now is that just like the moment that Jennifer just had, entrepreneurship has suddenly just emerged and gone crazy. And in 2020, the worst year that most of us can remember on the planet, turned out to be the year of the entrepreneur. And for Florida, it was even bigger. I'm not going to hit on the numbers here, but we were top of the list in the United States of places where people started out of desire, not out of a requirement to start a new company. And these are Kauffman Foundation numbers from a study that they did early this year. And I encourage you to go take a look at that if you really want to see what others are doing when you think about courageousness. This is the year that was 2020. So on to the next slide. Let's talk a little bit about women businesses in the United States. Now, there's a lot of stuff on this slide, and I'm not going to go through every bit of it in detail, but I want you to realize that the numbers, we as women are out there doing things for others in the context of more than 10 million, 12, over 12, in fact, and generating almost $2 trillion a year in revenues. 40% of the businesses today are started by women. That's how, so when you look at that number of 2020 and you look at what's happening now, it's huge. We are moving up. And while we got a little work to do in Central Florida to catch up, we're definitely doing this at a national level. And we as women here need to be doing the same thing because we can. There are so many of us here with great capabilities. When you look at the number of net new jobs, or net new businesses every single day in 2020, women started nearly 2,000 of those. So it's crazy. And more than half of those were started by women of color, which just means that we have pushed past some thresholds in a broad sense, but we've got a lot more work to do here. Latinas started nearly 90%, or Latina businesses grew nearly 90%. And there were so many more women entrepreneurs in recent years than in years past. This number has grown and grown and grown and grown. And we're looking at this as our primary source of income, which is a huge change from years past. In past years, women who started businesses often started small service-oriented businesses that were not typically very scalable and didn't often provide the primary source of income. They were additive. They were kind of off the side of the desk or part-time at night. So maybe something small that followed a purpose, but maybe something that was a requirement just to survive or make ends meet. Not true today. And you're going to hear from some entrepreneurs who are showing us that one when we get to the panel. But we are looking at the increase in return on investment in those businesses, especially in tech companies where women-led companies are seeing much higher ROIs than their male counterparts. And when you look at just one venture fund, they're telling us with data that women are outperforming men in their portfolio. But we're doing something that's not quite as progressive as it should be. We haven't quite gotten on the mark here. Only 25% of women go out looking for money, which is something in us. And I'm going to say that that's residual. We're going to get past this as women. And we only are getting about 7% of the venture funds for startups these days. But I think the reason for that is as much us as anything else. We aren't finding that moment of courage and just stepping right into it and facing it head on. That's something that we all need to learn to do, and we will. But here's the great place where women are doing really well. I don't know if you guys are addicted to things like Indiegogo and Kickstarter and so many of the crowdfunding platforms that have come into play over the last few years. But now there are even crowdfunding platforms for companies that will be tech companies and will ultimately become public companies. So there are different ways to invest in those kinds of new startups, whether they're a product and something on Kickstarter that might be interesting, or whether it's a tech in cybersecurity. It doesn't really matter. Women are outperforming men on these platforms too. And it's because we know how to get out there and tell our story and tell what our purpose is and do it with great passion. So this is an opportunity. SBA, we are taking more than half of the small loans from SBA programs, but we can do more and do better. That probably has something to do with the traditional types of businesses that we bring into play. And then we're also asking for less money. This is another woman sort of thing, but we're going to get over this. And it's these kinds of things and programs like AWE and Winning Women and EAN, all of these sorts of things are there to help us learn how to be better at this. We are receiving a little less, but I think it's because we're not stepping into that curve. So let's move on to the next slide and talk a little bit about the what we really are doing. We're generating that $1.7 trillion in revenue, according to the National Association of Women Businesses, but we have some things to overcome. And I just mentioned a few of those. Social expectations, okay, there are still some limitations there, but There don't have to be. That's all on us. Accessing funding, we are getting so much better at this, and I believe that Kristen Wiley is going to have a lot to say on this topic because she's raised a lot of capital and will have plenty to say here. Struggling to be taken seriously. Now, this is interesting because many of the points that Alexandria made about credibility and trust, those are things that sometimes we don't step into in the way that we might, or the way that our male counterparts might. It is with conviction and belief that we are the right thing at the right moment. And that's also about owning our accomplishments and building our support networks and trying to find that really difficult balance in family and business life. But the most important one, I think, on the bottom is the one that I have struggled with a lot. I've started 5 companies. Not all 5 were complete successes. And I can tell you that there's a fear of failure. Failure can happen and happens all the time. But if you look at failure as opportunity to learn, an opportunity to pivot, an opportunity to change and perfect by asking more humans and finding out the answers from real people, you will never be afraid of failure again. You'll look for it because you'll be finding those places where you can improve. So let's move on to the next slide here and talk a little bit about what StarterStudio does to help companies of all types. And we have done an extraordinary job with women, and we are continuing to do that. And those numbers are increasing every day. So StarterStudio has a number of programs that you'll see on the next slide here, which is, we start with first about us, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. So we have sponsors like EY, like Orlando Regional Health, like South State Bank, and a number of others that we'll show you in just a moment. But we've put through nearly 300 companies in a variety of programs that have raised over $100 million in capital for their ventures. And we outpost programs into other locations. So while Orlando is our home, and that's where we began and where we've done the bulk of our work, we are now doing that same work with programming around Central Florida and various places. So we do that with a set of programs on the next slide that are about stages. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself here about our sponsors. I mentioned the sponsors. Yes, let's look at those. Embry-Riddle University is a sponsor, the City of Orlando, the Downtown Economic Partnership in Orlando, Orange County, banks, EY, universities, Embry-Riddle, UCF, Rollins, and then some of our venture partners in the area. We do a ton of this kind of relationship assistance through the community by plugging in these players into starters and startups and in turn plugging them back in. And then let me get quickly to the program so I don't run out of time here. There are several levels of programs. We're going to talk right now about the middle one, which is the Build Accelerator. And that's new, how to run and grow a sustainable company. And on the next slide, just a bit about how many of these kinds of programs we have done. The idea stage, which is where 2 of our other starters from today came through. The seed stage, 2 of our other starters today came through. We've got a lot of work going on that's about how we move companies through the process. And we, in fact, ourselves have funded $1.2 million into startups that come through our seed stage program. So the Build program itself, on the next slide, really is about the ability to scale companies of all types, including very, very diverse ones. About 23% of our alum are women. Last year's earliest cohort had almost 50% women. A lot of entrepreneurs are a variation on many of these things and come from lots of different backgrounds. So maybe women who are of color, maybe LGBTQ, maybe veterans. We even have spouses of veterans often coming into the programs, but we're really proud of how much diversity there is in our programs because this is where opportunity is. So our Build program next has very clear objectives, which is a short span of time to get to how to build and run a company, now that you know that it is viable, that there is a need and a requirement for the passionate movement you've begun out in the world, and what that offering is to those who want to engage in that movement with you. So we get to things like operational fundamentals, scaling, growth, resourcing, and how to get customers, because that's the most important thing. But I think you're going to listen to some women who are going to tell you all about that in just a minute here. So with that, I think let's just get right onto the conversation, shall we? Can I turn it back over to you, Jennifer? And then anybody who has questions, I'll put my email address here in the chat, and you can reach out. And of course, don't fail to hit me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lillian, for all that great information. And again, very interesting statistics. So for sure, if you guys have questions, please throw them into the chat. And as well, once we get into our panel, welcome your questions. Our first session, we had a lot of great questions from the audience. So please don't be shy. We'll try to monitor the chat. And Lillian, I say the same to you. You've done this so many times. So if there's a question that pops in your mind, please feel free to ask the panel, because you kind of been there, done that a few times. So that being said, I'm very excited to welcome our panel of ladies to talk a little bit more about scaling. And whoops, sorry, the slides just left me. So, so as you guys have met Alex with Purpose Pioneers, we also have Kristen Wiley, who's the founder and CEO of StarterStudio, and we have Katie Homan, who is a co-founder of Hino. Instead, I think it would be good to hear, we've heard from Alex about your origin story, but I think it would be great just to spend a few seconds with Katie and Kristen to hear a little bit about their origin story. So I'll go to Kristen first because she's on my left.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And I did go through the StarterStudio programs, 2 of them, and they were really great and instrumental in our growth. So I'm excited to be back. But yeah, so a little bit of my background, studied marketing at school. I actually never really thought that I was going to be starting a company. I always loved the concept of business and had side hustles and different things growing up and even out. Yeah, and even outside of my normal day jobs. But it was just never something that I really thought about as a career path or something I was going to do. So I went to school for marketing. Upon getting jobs after college, I started working at a few agencies, started using a bunch of tech platforms to manage different campaigns for our clients. And that's where I started kind of getting interested in how much we were paying these platforms for not very much of results. And I felt like I could build a platform that had a better concept and idea. But I didn't really know where to start. And I started actually getting involved in the, startup space in Orlando at the time. I actually went to a program called 1 Million Cups, where people would pitch every single week. I don't even know if it still happens, but with COVID and everything, but they would pitch every week. And I started seeing people pitching their businesses and growing them. And once I started seeing that, I was like, oh, they can do it. This is something that I can do too. And that's where I had the idea. I heard about StarterStudio. I applied when it was just at idea stage, and kind of went through like perfect timing with that. I did it while I was still working full time at my other job until I had enough revenue and it was viable enough for me to make the jump and start full time. So essentially what my company does is we connect brands with what are deemed as people call micro influencers, or just, I like to say, people with influence online. So we ship products to people in exchange for posting about them on social media, and brands pay us to be in the boxes that we ship to them. So that's like the little snippet of what we do. Now we've grown to 40 team members as of last week. So grown tremendously, especially in the last year. We doubled our team. So happy to chat around anything in that category as well. And we did go the venture funding route.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's very interesting, especially since I've discovered TikTok in the last few years. So
Yeah. TikTok's great.
I kind of go down the rabbit hole very quickly. So thank you for that. Katie, how about your origin story?
So similar to Kristen in the sense that I had no desire or wherewithal to be a business owner when I was going through grad school. I got to the point one day, my background is I'm a physical therapist. So I got to the point one day working for somebody else where I was like, you know what, I feel like I can do this better. I feel like I can serve my patients better. I'll have more opportunity there. So my husband and I, our first business is actually physical therapy clinics. So we're actually just celebrating our 12th year anniversary for that next week, which is crazy that that went by so fast. But as we got more into the physical therapy realm, my husband is a software engineer and at the time worked for Oracle. And so piece by piece, as I started growing that business, we were realizing that there were a lot of inefficiencies in the technology side of what our profession deals with. And so I was using tons and tons of different systems to try to get one simple job done. So of course, it was taking time away from my patients. It was taking time away from running the business. And so Jeff and I kind of put our heads together and he started building what I needed within the clinics. Fast forward a few years as we started building everything I needed in the clinics to be on a single platform. That's kind of how Hino was born. And so he, after lots of convincing, he quit his full-time job and we were in StarterStudio class 6 with Kristen. And then we went into the seed stage after that. And so today we service other physical therapy clinics that utilize our software to run everything from patient documentation to scheduling to billing to credit card processing to pretty much every aspect that a business owner would need in the physical therapy space.
So I think I said this the last session, but we just keep hearing again and again, right? How necessity, a lot of these things are just born out of pure necessity to I think Alex, you also touched on this. You have to do it, right? And so especially in this last 18 months, empathy and creating a movement, all of that it's all the same theme. You just have to stand up and say, I can do this, no matter what that is. And so again, we hear that a lot. We just, there was something that I needed and I just did it. I just created it instead of waiting for somebody else to do it. So I think that's so inspiring to hear similar stories. And I think to that end, and again, I think Alex, you touched on this, but clearly, I think you create, your purpose and your passion, you create it. It stays with you as you grow because you create a movement, right? So that's how you keep your purpose front and center as you grow. So I'm curious to hear how Kristen and Katie kind of have done that too, because you can lose sight of your original purpose, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot of demands on you, and I'm sure there's a lot of maybe overlords saying you have to do it this way, especially if you're going for funding. So maybe a couple of just comments about how do you keep that purpose front and center? And maybe we'll keep with Katie and then we'll go back to Kristen.
I feel like for me, that's easy because I'm a physical therapist. And so I still have my hand in the day-to-day in my clinics. And so for us, the ultimate goal, whether it's a biller at Hino or it's a customer support person at Hino, our goal is to help patients feel better, move better, be more functional. And so I feel like it's easy for me to relay that to the team. So even though they're not in the trenches and they're not directly seeing, hearing, or working with patients, they have a huge part to play in the healing of people all across the US, which is just an amazing goal for all of us to continue to grow.
And so before I go to Kristen, I guess that leads to a good follow-up question around, and I think you guys are probably seeing this, I know we're seeing this, a lot of employee turnover. So again, it's great. Everybody is out there saying, where do I want to do next, right? But again, for people that actually need employees, it's also been a bit staggering because we are seeing a high rate of turnover. And so do you retain and recruit talent by really tying together that purpose? And so I think Katie, I would, follow up to you on that one.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think being able to convey what the overall purpose, why you started this in the first place, how you got to this point with every single member of your team is vital to keeping them there, because they could sit there and crunch numbers. Like I said, if it's a biller or something, they crunch numbers for any company. But if there's not a bigger purpose for them and why and how they contribute to this company and how it impacts people, they're just going to take something down the road for 50 cents more an hour.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yes. So Kristen, what are your thoughts around keeping purpose to the center and then tying it to how do you get people?
Yeah, I mean, a purpose is important. I think it's also like the vision and the storytelling that goes along with it. They say in fundraising, it's like growth plus vision allows you to raise. So I think really making sure you can tell that story properly. And I think there's like an old saying that, like, entrepreneurs just look at the way the world that should be. And that's kind of the true north there. But as your team grows, I think for attracting talent too, a really big part of it is making sure you have someone on your team whose entire job is like having a pulse on that and understanding how you can constantly improve and make it the best place to work. So that's like one of our main pillars, is like, how can we make this the best place to work, so that if it's not one of your main verticals or points that you're covering weekly, monthly, it can easily go by the wayside. And I think that your team members can feel that. And I think that's why larger companies end up having a harder time retaining talent, because as you get larger, it's harder to have that one-to-one connection and like, show that you really care about them. But at the end of the day, I think that companies that show that aren't having retention problems. Like, I think that COVID and all of that actually gave huge opportunities to like, build better relationships even with some of your team members. But that being said, obviously the market is just crazy right now. And also I wouldn't be a founder on a presentation if I didn't say we are hiring. So please go to our website if you're interested.
I'd also love to just add a little nugget, Jennifer, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Just based on the people that we have here, I think this could be valuable. So I'm echoing everything that Katie and Kristen said. It's just so important to, like, Katie, I love you do healing work. That in itself is purpose driven. So love everything that you're all sharing. And Kristen, it's so important to have a human being who keeps a pulse on everything. So with what we do at Purpose Pioneers, we're the purpose pioneers. So, we're extra with the purpose stuff. We needed a purpose-driven operating system. And what that means is, you're starting to hire humans. You need to, how do you manage them? What do your day-to-day operations look like? So, we put stuff together, and then as the theme of what we're saying, we're like, we're not going to wait around for someone to build it. So we built it ourselves. We call it the purpose alignment system. And this is what our company runs on. And not only is it getting the job done, making sure we're moving the needle forward, but it's creating intentional experiences within the business to remind people of the vision, remind people what we do on a daily basis to get there, remind people what are our core values. So this operating system, and you can, make it work for you, has really allowed us to attract and retain top talent, especially during this pandemic. And another thing I want to share, the job description when you're hiring, ours are probably all up on LinkedIn. If you go to our Purpose Pioneers page, it's 2 pages for us. The first page is our purpose, how we bring that purpose to life, our core values, the personality traits we want in a person, and the soft skills. And then the second page is the hard skills, what the salary is, all the boundaries, all that good stuff. So it's so important in this changing time in the workforce. Think about who you need instead of what you need. And that has created a culture for us that I can't even believe it. I'm like, these people are working with their blood, sweat, and tears. I thought I was only going to be my co-founder and I just being crazy people on the couch at StarterStudio at 2 a.m. It was only going to be us working with that level of grit. And you'd be surprised what purpose and values can do to attract top talent.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so many of you may not be aware. I mean, obviously EY, global public accounting firm, but we moved to a purpose-led vision. I think it's been now since 2000 and maybe 12 or before, but building a better working world. And so that has resonated, and people think, oh, you're a bunch of CPAs. And it's no, we tie what we do to kind of help move the working world forward. And so I think it's so important because, and I tell my team this all the time, that when you get into the trenches, the nuts and bolts of it, you really need to know what energizes you, because you can't just give it up right when you're in the depths of a busy season. So I think this is so important. And I want to get into kind of the nitty gritty then. So we're talking about scaling, right? So what would your best advice be for companies going from startup to scale up? Because that's where we see the numbers where we're not doing so well. So maybe we'll let's start with you, Alex, because you're at the top, and then we'll go around.
We do it based on who we see on the Zoom screen.
know.
It's hilarious. Yeah. So the top things to do when you're going from like it's a tipping point. That's what happened with us. It was like this total tipping point. And really what was critical for us was capital and team. I believe when you get to that tipping point of building and starting it and just like figuring it out to, oh my God, we have product market fit, we have paying clients, we have recurring revenue. It becomes less about the products and services and the outward facing. That is always important, but it becomes more, the focus shifts to growing your internal team. So we got capital a little bit differently. We didn't do like venture capital, but we leveraged our community and we went to our network of people who have been watching us for 4 years and watching us grow. And we actually got just a standard promissory note. So a standard, it was a large amount. So it looks like venture capital, but it's a little bit different. We still retain our entire company. This is someone that believes in our movement, believes in our purpose, and was like, here you go. So there are so many different ways that you can get capital. And then the second thing, we put that capital directly towards growing the team. And we looked at it from the bottleneck. What is the bottleneck in the business of the team member that we need dedicated to that bottleneck through and through? And then the last thing, I know I said this already, but I'm really biased. You got to get on stage. When you are in that scaling mode, you have to be out in your community. You have to be talking about what you're doing. We created this magnetic field around Purpose Pioneers because my co-founder and I, we were just obsessed. We went to 1 million cups every week. We went to StarterStudio. We started coming back and speaking like Lillian piggybacked off of what I was sharing. The credibility, trust, and authority that is built from you going and talking about the damn thing on the platform. It's a game changer.
Thank you. I love I love how candid, so refreshing. But again, capital and team. I mean, and again, these are similar themes. We've, had a vision of putting our people first. I mean, you have to put your people first, and that should equate to sales or clients, right? But you put your people first. And I think it shows. Kristen, how about you? How did you go from startup to scale up?
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey. And I think like one of the biggest things some entrepreneur told me early on is like every time you like triple your employees, it's like a big, all of a sudden the entire game changes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's happened to us every time that's happened. It's like a completely different game and like everything you learned from the first part isn't even applicable to the second part. I will say, I mean, ours was, I think, a little different than Alex, where I believe in being kind of like heads down and just like kind of getting it done. So I think it was great, for if your customer acquisition is going on stage and talking, but like understanding where your customers are and how you can get to them. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it and kind of doing what makes sense for you. Whether that, depending on your personality, there's like tons of ways. Ours was like building a content library and building up hundreds of blogs so that we could rank on SEO and became like the top person in certain categories for attracting clients that way. So it just, in terms of picking which customer acquisition cost or method makes the most sense to you, I think is key early on, one that fits with like your personality and like how you want to scale your company in general. But I think also just changing your mindset. When I started the company, I think I had visions of how big it could get, but I stifled them a little bit. And to be honest, like it was a little challenging too when you start pitching investors in different markets, how they view things differently. We did end up raising money outside of Florida to start out with. I will say, if I didn't have StarterStudio was the one that believed in us, they gave us our first check. So shout out to StarterStudio. But then beyond that, kind of getting to the next step, it was challenging in Florida at the time. This is a few years ago now, so it's changing. But you have to find people that have a mindset, like venture capital is a completely different space and a completely different game. Like the people investing in that space want to see that you can make $1 billion plus business. So if you're not pitching that $1 billion vision, like you shouldn't be fundraising with them. And there's also nothing wrong with not creating $1 billion business too. So I think early on, I was kind of grappling with that because we were lucky to have a pretty profitable business, and we even hit profitability, and we were debating like, do we need to raise funding? But to me, the vision was so big that I wanted to go for it. And that's why I opted to go for that. But there's nothing wrong with either route. Like there's no right or wrong. It's more like what being true to yourself and which one you want to grow from there.
Being true to yourself. I think that is so important. And I love the, the leadership classes that I've been taking the last few years really have changed the tone of what they're teaching, transformational leaders, which is lean into your strengths. You don't have to always develop your weaknesses. Lean into your strengths, because that should be enough. And I mean, I think that's what you're saying, is that you need to find your lane, right? There's room for everything. And that's the essence of diversity. We always talk about diversity in these, some certain pillars, but that is the essence of diversity. Katie,
Totally
how about you?
So we were positioned a little bit differently, already having physical therapy clinics. So in terms of capital, we could pull from that if we needed to. So we pretty much have bootstrapped everything going forward. But also being a technology company, we knew our biggest cost really was going to be employees. And so to be able to automate and to be able to get things as tight as possible within the software was one of our priorities early on. Another thing was really just putting our heads down and acquiring customers. We got this $500 a month customer. Well, that was $500 a month every month forever until they, terminated or sold their business or whatever the case was. So for us, it was really making sure that those few customers we had in the beginning were over-serviced, were super happy. And that's kind of how it snowballed into acquiring more and more and more customers. I would say probably 60% of our new customers coming on board even today are because of word of mouth, because the current customers that we've had since 2017 have been so happy, and has made their life easier for their business. They've been able to expand their business. They've been able to add employees there. They've been able to service more patients and change their communities for the positive.
So it's interesting because I think it's same theme. Everybody just has a slight variation. So there's just, I think, again, the takeaway here is there's not just one right path, right, to success. I don't know, Lillian, you can probably even speak to that because of your build stage and what you've probably seen.
I think that the greatest learning for me as an entrepreneur and as someone who has supported entrepreneurs forever, and now does it formally, there is never one right answer. And that's the truth about life. There's never one right answer. There are so many ways to approach everything. And I just love what you had to say there, Jennifer, a minute ago about leaning into your strengths. I think as women, and I'll say a lot about the woman thing because I've spent years and years and years, as the only woman around a technology table at, major companies around the world. And I think that the really interesting part about that is that the notion that you start out assuming that someone looking across the table at you is looking at a woman and judging you differently. And as soon as you can kind of let that one go and say, yeah, nothing to judge here. I'm just another human being. I'm going to find their humanness and we're going to have a conversation here, even if it's in a different language. So those kinds of things and understanding that answering the questions, product market fit, we all hear this constantly, is one of those key elements of trying to get to what the right answer is for not just us as a company, as a business, as a product, but also how we get the right employee company fit, how we get the right investor company fit or not investor. And I was pointing out that Katie turned down our money. She was in our seed stage program and she turned down our check. She turned it down because she knew she had that movement already coming her way and she could bootstrap this in just exactly the way she wanted. And Alex's approach to having one big kind of lender say, we believe in you, we're behind you. And Kristen's more traditional way in technology that we find, which is finding outside capital investment. There is never one right answer. So we have to be willing to accept that and can completely open our minds to the variations on the theme and not expect something before we head in. But this is where the power of mentors, the power of networks, the power of inputs from those who have been there, done that, or have completely different points of view, which goes back, Jennifer, to your lean into your strengths and look to others for theirs. That's exactly where you get that power from, is the ability to take it all on board, synthesize it to what's right for you, and then go at it.
That's a perfect lead in, and we did not plan this, but to my next question, which is kind of the blind spots. And so I'm curious to hear from the panel around, what do you think that most women are missing as they think about the growth of their business? Because I think that women do tend to have some blind spots, exactly, I think, Lillian, that you just kind of went through. So what, I'm going to start with Alex.
What I see missing within women, and Jennifer, I think it was Jennifer or Lillian. It's just all amazing in this room, so I'm just losing track of the amazingness. Conviction and belief. That is something I see missing within. I don't want to generalize, but as I go out and I grow my business, I speak a lot. It's part of our model. Like, I want women to own what they're doing. Like, I mean, I can't help it. You all see how I speak. It just comes from this place in my belly. Like, I just believe in myself. I believe in everyone in this room. I just believe so deeply in what's possible. And I want more women, like, talk to me like that. Like, I want to be like pounding my arms on the freaking table. Like I don't care. I don't care what anyone else says. I don't care if someone could laugh at you or reject you. I don't give a shit. Like, let me feel it. Like, I want to feel it. I want people, especially women, to just stop thinking about what other people are doing, stop caring what other women are doing, like, release the judgment and the comparinitis, and just like I want to be mesmerized, and just like, because it's all in there, especially women. We are divine. We are divine goddesses, and it's all in there. Like, I want to feel it. So there you go.
Amen, sister. Let me tell you something. If you don't think that someone can get passionate about taxes, you should see me pound on the table when I'm talking about taxes.
I want to be in that room with you, girl. I want to love taxes when I'm done with you.
Oh my God, challenge accepted. So Katie, any thoughts? What do you think that maybe there's blind spots for female founders?
I think we try to do too much. I think that we're very, very good at multitasking and doing a million things at a time. And I feel like it works for a while, but then there are periods when it starts to break down. And I can relate this to personal life too, right? Being a mom and having kids and running 2 businesses and having, 40 plus employees. So I feel like the biggest thing to remember is that you do not have to do it all. This is not just on you. You have people that are there to support you, whether it's an employee or whether it's just a mentor or, a group of friends that are in a similar boat. I feel like if you say yes to everything, you're going to run yourself into the ground. And so whether it's delegating out or whether it's being like, you know what, no, I'm not going to focus on that right now. That's just kind of a squirrel that's getting in my way.
So actually, we just got a question in the chat. Any tips on delegation and trusting others as far as taking on other leadership roles? So to that, I think that's a good follow-up. And then we'll have Krista maybe speak about her blind spot. So any tips on delegation? Because I know that I mastered that like 20 years ago. So
for me, I think it's you having trust in who the person you're delegating to, but also letting them know, hey, if you screw up, I'm not going to fire you. It's not the end of the world. Like, people make mistakes. That's where you learn from it. So I think you have to not expect perfection.
Yeah.
And you have to give that person the, a sense of ownership in what they're doing. And so if they fall on their face right away, they're not going to miss it. They're going to know that, and it's going to be a learning point for you. So going forward, that's not going to happen again.
Yeah, no, I think that's key. I did learn that early on from my mentors as well. You may not. That's why you have to turn it over. People have to learn. And that's the way to do it. So Kristen, I know we have a few minutes left. So Kristen, any blind spots for female founders that you think?
Yeah, I think I would just kind of tell a story that I think shows it. But like, I think when I started the company, I didn't really think of myself doing it. I actually saw another woman pitching her business, watching her do it. If you probably know her in the community, Sunira, she ended up being a big mentor of mine with Fat Merchant, now called Stacks. And I think that that's an example of just showing in terms of it was a blind spot for me, and why I think representation of different people across every background is important to see in places of leadership, because I think we were so used to seeing the same type of leader, the same type of CEO over and over and over again, that it just like didn't even cross our minds that like that could be me, you know, like thinking about wanting to have big aspirations about taking my company public. Like now you have people like you saw Bumble and she's up there like taking it public. And I just think like allowing yourself to think big enough, but then also like understanding that most of what's created in the current management styles weren't created with kind of everyone in mind and different personality types in mind. They were very much created around certain stereotypes, and it's changing, which is exciting. But at the same time, like even as I try to figure out my own leadership style, I struggle with, do I want to try to personify someone that is not who I am? Even when I'm pitching to investors and things like that, there's like this stereotype that like I can either pretend to be, but that's not true to myself. But that's what investors are used to seeing. And it's like that interesting, I don't know, struggle of understanding the balance of, you know, a lot of people fake it till you make it, but it's like, you know, there's just, it's finding that balance. And I think that that's a thing that I think women inherently struggle with just based on the way that things have been created. And then even to your point, I think Lillian was bringing up like return on investment of female founders is higher than men. I think women are amazing. Don't get me wrong. Like A+, but I actually think the reason that we have a higher return on investment is because we're valuing ourselves too low, which makes a higher return. And so like that's the number one thing. I've been searching for studies on this, but in terms of valuing your company, so that's essentially setting how you're the price for it. So you figure out how much you're selling for how much you're raising. So if you're raising $1 million and your valuation is 10 million, you're selling 10%. So that's just easy math right there. And what happens is I'm finding, I just started surveying every founder I talk to. I just ask them, and it's kind of almost like asking people's salary, but I don't care. I think we need to talk about it, because that's how I found out that like one of my friends, he got double the valuation and his company had half the revenue of mine. And I was like, that's fascinating. And he was shocked to hear my story as well. And the more that we get to talk about that and understand those differences, I think really opens it up. And then it allowed me to have more confidence, which is kind of the other it's not really a blind spot, just something to work on. Right. Is I couldn't have had that confidence knowing in to ask the valuation that I wanted. Like we held out for the valuation we wanted. But I would have, if I didn't know that his valuation was that, I probably would have taken a much lower one. So that's just, I think, true in, you know, salary, everything, not just company valuation. But
that's amazing insight. I mean, I think that, so look, I know we're at time, but this is such an important conversation, and those insights around valuation, I think, are so important. And I do think we can use that as a thread into our final session, which is lead like a boss. And that's on September 28th. But what I want to leave you ladies with is what I've heard is be bold, be empathetic, start a movement, and delegate. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. Thank you so much to the panel. You guys were awesome. And congratulations. And I hope everything is going well in this long pandemic that hopefully we will be out of. But again, September 28th, lead like a boss, and we will send out the recording and hope to see you there. Thank you, everybody. Have a great one.